Welcome back to the John Fourcade Show, sponsored each week by Veterans Ford. Another one of our John Fourcade specials this week, a 2015 Ford Escape SE. Sale price $20,495. That's $5,700 in savings. Again, a 2015 Ford Escape SE. Sale price $20,495. Can't find a better deal than right here at Veterans Ford. Welcome back to the John Fourcade Show, sponsored each week by Veterans Ford. John, national championship game, finally we got what we wanted, and it was Cinderella. Ohio State defeating Oregon and not beating them by a little bit. It was a dominating performance, 42-20 over the Ducks. I said this last week, and I'll stand by it. Urban Meyer, best coach in college football, and he proved it. 538 yards against that Oregon defense. John, why I picked Ohio State to win, I thought they were better in the trenches, offensive, defensive line, and that showed up big.
And you stuck me with Oregon because
you were on the fence.
I was on the fence. You know, and I'm not an Oregon Duck guy. I just don't think they have defense up in the Pac-10, Pac-12 at all. I just feel like this football game came down to the big boys in the trenches, and that's the dominating fact. When the running back for 3 straight games, Elliott run for 225, 220, 246 yards in 3 games, that was unbelievable. And Jones, the third string my behind. This kid can play. Probably won't see him anymore in college football. Ohio State dominated this football game from the get-go. I wasn't impressed with the Heisman Trophy winner. I just think this whole game, and you say we got what we wanted. We got a college playoff game. We didn't get what I wanted. I wanted an SEC team in there, but it didn't happen. Ohio State showed why they deserve to be in the game.
Listen, I'm an SEC guy, and I've talked about it, and I'm kind of the representative there, but I'll say this. I think the college football world has shrunk. Now, you look at what's happened in the Big Ten now, I think that what you see with Urban Meyer and Ohio State, they're going to be back for a number of these games. Yes. You got Jim Harbaugh at Michigan. What's happened at Wisconsin in that sort of setting? I think Penn State's another team that could be in the mix somewhere down the line. You see the crunching up a little bit of college football, and a lot of it having to do with defensive coordinators under siege. And not only in the SEC, but all across college football, because of something Urban Meyer, when he brought from Utah to Florida, changed the college football world, the spread offense. And nobody's been able to figure it out. And we saw Cardale Jones. If you're watching this game and you said, okay, you don't know anything about Marcus Mariota, you don't know anything about Cardale Jones, guess what? You watched this game and said, you know what? That guy for Ohio State, he's the Heisman Trophy winner, not Marcus. So it does go to show you in that 3 games, I told you this, he's the only guy in the history of college football, start 3 games, get 3 rings. Big Ten championship ring, Sugar Bowl ring, national championship ring.
Well, I look at it this way. You were right when you said Urban Meyer brought so much to wherever he's been. And what he has, though, he's recruiting speed. He's recruiting fast guys who are big and can run. When you got a quarterback that's 6'4", 6'5", 250, who looks like a professional tight end in football. But you're right. When he went to Florida, he had a spread offense, but it's not the spread offense where quarterbacks are running all the time. It's more of a spread offense where he still can throw the football from the spread, Mike. And I look at it the way, most teams look at these guys. If you got speed and strength and power, you're going to win. He took that up there to the big boys up north and said, you know what, we're going to compete with the SEC, and you had to. 9 years in a row prior to this game, as an SEC team was in the championship game. They went and got powerful speed guys, and you look at it, just dominated that finesse over there in the West Coast. And right now, Ohio State, you got to look, people. Ohio State, you forgot Michigan State too. Michigan State, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and Wisconsin. They'll be competing against the 6, 7 big guys in the SEC. Now the other guys, the Pac-10, the Big Ten, and the Pac-12 are going to have to get on their horse and say, we got to compete. But you got to start playing defense, Mike. The Big Ten plays defense, the SEC plays defense, and everybody knows, and we said this year, what wins championships? Defense.
The other thing, too, is Ohio State sort of reminds me of an early 2000 version of what we saw on the West Coast at Southern Cal. Pete Carroll comes in, he starts recruiting all these athletes, keeping them in the state of California. They're not going everywhere else. And all of a sudden, man, they got a 5 or 6 year run that they weren't good. They were dominant. And I think Urban Meyer is on the precipice of doing the exact same thing at Ohio State, having those teams playing for a national championship every year. And like I said, the only thing I can compare it to is when Carroll came in at Southern Cal, he did the exact same flip of the coin. It took Nick 3 seasons, and he did the same thing at Alabama. So we've seen it now with Carroll, with Saban, and now Urban Meyer.
I think what's going to happen with Urban Meyer in Ohio State now is the fact, like in the SEC, you always say, oh, the SEC's beating up on each other week in and week out. Well, guess what's going to happen now?
Yeah, same thing in the Big Ten.
Ohio State's going to have to be playing, the Hall Balls in Michigan, in Wisconsin, and the Penn State, and then Michigan State. So I look at it like this. I think the way it's going to come now is Urban Meyer's not going to breeze through it now like he has in the last couple of seasons because these teams were down. I think now the Big Ten is going to have 5 or 6 teams now that the week in and week out, it's going to be hard to compete against those guys and come out of it hopefully healthy. But when you got your third-team quarterback after losing 2 in a row, it just goes to show you the caliber of players he brings in there.
Also, too, is his development of quarterbacks. That's been the cut with him. He is the quarterback whisperer. And this past week, we saw it here at LSU, the changeover. Kevin Steele gets the spot as the defensive coordinator, and a guy I know just a little bit from on the Bayou, Ed Bebe Orgeron, becomes the new defensive line coach. Normally when you bring in a defensive coordinator, he's front page.
Right.
But because Bebe's history of him, living on the Bayou, grew up right down the road from where I live, was the head coach at Ole Miss, and he's told me this numerous times. Listen, I love USC, but that dream job of mine was always to coach at LSU. Started out his college career at LSU before he went to Northwestern. So I felt that one of the things with LSU is that lack of development of defensive linemen over the last couple of years.
That, yes.
Other than Eagle Ferguson, they really have not done that well. One thing I do know, Ed Orgeron, 10 first-round picks defensive linemen he's recruited and developed, and he'll have an 11th with Leonard Williams. If you half-stepping it with Bebe, you ain't playing.
Well, the thing you got to look at, too, is he brings so much to the game. He's passionate. He understands it. He gets along with these players and players like Ed. Ed can get in the trenches with him and discuss things, and it's so easy to go over there and say, hey, guys, you want to go to the NFL? You got to come through me. And the thing, though, that scares me, Mike, and LSU is one of the top teams in the country, the organization in the country, and you start talking about all these, Frank Wilson, great recruiter, Ed Orgeron. They talk about Kevin Steele could be that as well, and all this and all that. Well, I'm going to say this now. It's easy to get the guys who are 5 stars, #1 guy running back in the country to go to LSU. He's local. He's going to go there. Then you get a receiver last year, Malachi Dupre. Then you got one this season. My question to you and everybody else out there recruiting, where's your quarterback? Why don't you go out there and get these 5-star quarterbacks? And I want to see it Orgeron and these guys now say, we got to turn ourselves and start recruiting big-time quarterbacks that come in. I think Jamarcus Russell was the last big-time 5-star guy they brought in there. Having Ed Orgeron on your staff is going to definitely help because it's not just Louisiana. His name is known all over the South, so he'll be able to go in there and recruit some players.
The thing about it is Ryan Perlew, he was a big-time performer, and off-the-field issues with Ryan into that spot. Brandon Harris was a super highly recruited. He could have went to Auburn, Ohio State. Is the development of quarterbacks, John. I think more than anything.
Well, then who's that, Mike? Who's
that? I put that right smack on the blame of the fact that the head coach, offensive coordinator have to change. If you're recruiting spread quarterbacks, you have to change your system. You can't do exactly what Zach Mettenberger was doing at LSU.
And if they do that, Mike, then you got to change your style of offensive lineman. You can't bring 325, 330-pound offensive linemen and expect them to run this spread. They're going to get wore out. It just goes to show you, you don't need to have that, Mike. You don't need to go in there and have 300-pound guys that run a spread. You can still run some form of it at a pro-style spread. I'm not saying everybody has to run pro-style offense, but you got to have a quarterback who can throw the football. 48%, you can't win national championship. You can't even get to a championship game having quarterbacks under 50% throwing the football. And who wants to come here?
That's the big question mark. You're talking about recruiting a quarterback. If I look at the past record and say, other than Zach Mettenberger, tell me the last one. You maybe say Matt Flynn?
Mike, I've watched and I've seen LSU's quarterbacks they're recruiting to bring in right now the 3 guys that they're on their board because I do my show and I have to follow them. These guys are spread-type offense who don't throw the football like you think they throw. You can sit there and say, oh, this guy's – who cares about numbers in high school? Anybody can go to 2A and 3A or wherever it may be and throw a lot of football. They need to give him a big pro-style quarterback, or Zach Mettenberger, Marcus Dupree, even a Ryan Perlew, who was a good quarterback that could come in here. That's it. And you hit the nail on the head when you first started this segment. You better get some defensive linemen for Ed Orgeron because that's how you win football games. They're going to have the secondary. They need the guys up front and a quarterback, and I think this team can get back to where it wants to be.
One of the things Ed's always told me is, Mike, you win in college football. Great quarterback, super defensive lineman.
no
I think
doubt.
that's it. Kevin Steele, I think, is going to bring a little bit of more edge pressure than we've seen in the past. I think John Chavis has been a funnel guy, come right up the middle with good defensive tackles. I think one of the things with Kevin Steele is he's going to come from the edge. I know J.J. McCleskey really touted him. Really good X and O's coach, super recruiter.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what LSU does with their coaching staff.
We'll be back with more of the John Fourcade Show, sponsored each week by Veterans Ford. We'll be right back.